Yo, what's up guys? You got pokeaim here, and today we're going to be talking about the new UBERS Dynamax Clause that they have. Basically, it's a complex ban for Dynamax, and I'll tell you what it is real quick before we read their reasoning why, and I would love to know your thoughts on it. So, for the past few weeks, UBERS has been having this discussion about what to do about Dynamax and UBERS. Now, Dynamax and UBERS, it wasn't broken, apparently, until Pokemon Home came out, where they released a lot more UBERS, because previously Zacian, Zamazenta, and Eternatus could not Dynamax themselves. But when they released Marshadow, Mewtwo, specifically Necrozma main, because apparently he's the most broken Dynamaxer, from what I've heard, they decided to put in this clause after a lot of discussion. So this is the UBERS Dynamax Clause. Pokemon on the UBERS Dynamax ban list cannot Dynamax. What does that mean? Any Pokemon on this list right here cannot Dynamax in the UBERS tier. So Ditto's number one. I guess they didn't want to make it for UBERS in general, just because Ditto is also part of the problem, according to them. And again, we're going to read what they have to say about it. Kyurem-White, they don't even have Kyurem-Black on this, which is interesting. Nor Melmetal. Lunala, Marshadow, Mewtwo, Necrozma Duskmane, Necrozma Dawn Wings, Reshiram, Solgaleo, and Zekrom are all Pokemon that cannot Dynamax in the UBERS tier. So this is really interesting because, again, this is a complex ban. Instead of outright banning Dynamax, they decided to limit it, and instead of even just limiting it to to the non-UBERS, because there are a lot of Pokemon in the lower tiers that are actually very good in UBERS. Corviknight, Arcanine, Gyarados, just to name a few. I've even seen Centiskorch be able to take on Zacian, depending, Snorlax, and again, I can go on and on. But these are Pokemon that have certain characteristics about them that are able to take on the UBERS, as well as Dynamax letting them do even more in the tier. But they decided to do this and this complex ban, which is very interesting because typically Smogon does not do any complex bans. So it's interesting that UBERS is kind of breaking that on its own, and they do have a council, excuse me. And as you can see, only one of them posted, "Don't make this clause." So we're gonna read why. So there's a lot of reading right here, but yeah, we'll go into after that again. I'll give my thoughts as we keep going, but prior Dynamax and UBERS, why are we at this point anyway? Prior to Pokemon Home's release, Dynamax was regarded as a fine mechanic by the community, balanced by the centralization of Zacian and Eternatus and their inability to use the mechanic themselves. When Pokemon Home released, it came with legalizing various UBERS present in the Sword and Shield code. There was one catch though: they could Dynamax, and of course this is the difference between these UBERS and the ones that we had in this game. The ones in this game can't Dynamax. In fact, all their moves, Behemoth Blade, Behemoth Bash, Dynamax Cannon, are doubled in power versus Dynamax Pokemon. So they actually, like, even though these other mons are getting, very powerful for 3 turns, they can combat them for the most part. This has drastically thrown off the balance in the metagame to the point almost everyone has expressed discontent with it. Games often centralize directly around certain Dynamax boosted threats and how they are abused or nullified to the point little else matters. This pressure the various Dynamax-powered UBERS Pokemon have. This pressure the various Dynamax-powered UBERS Pokemon have also extends to the Teambuilder, reducing the interesting choices available both to use and to play around opposing threats compared to the general expectations our metagame has. Before Home, Dynamax was viewed as a cool way for lower-tier Pokemon to stand out in UBERS, but now the UBERS themselves, access to the mechanic, are the ones in full oppressive control of the metagame. So this is actually very interesting too, because this also takes into account something that is not typically taken into account when it comes to banning. Like, this talks about how it pressures the team builder, and now you can't use interesting choices, which is really funny because obviously that should not be a reason for banning something unless it's so restrictive and uncompetitive to the point where you literally cannot do this with your team builder or you will lose 100% of the time. But no, in this case it's more so it didn't give them interesting choices. Now I'm still following it because again, I'm all for complex bans. I think Speed Boost Blaziken and Blaze Blaziken should have been 2 separate Pokemon, and we could have just banned Speed Boost Blaziken itself. Obviously, they're not in the game anymore, but I'm just giving you some examples on that. And yeah, let's keep going with this. Again, I'm just talking as it goes. The council discussions led most of us to believe that the proposal of a complex ban on Dynamax as an initial starting point is the right way to begin. UBERS has the unique ability to pursue complex bans in our efforts to preserve elements in the metagame provided they are grounded in logic. I think that's very interesting too, that that UBERS has the ability to do complex bans, but the last time they did something, I think it was the Mega Rayquaza. It was either the Mega Rayquaza or I think it was the Mega Rayquaza ban, and then they also like did some things with the Shadow Tag ban. So for years, UBERS was kind of like laughed at because of that. I loved UBERS, and I always do, but it's interesting that this has happened. I'm surprised that Chaos hasn't stepped in, the owner of Smolon. But there's a limit to how complex things can be dealt with when we consider the wider tiering system and ease of community understanding, but we know that any complex bans comes with added knowledge burden into our players. We also have to accept that tiering in UBERS will come with some controversial and messy decisions when compared to other tiers in order to fit our goals. Still, the complex ban list needs something solid to operate from, something that makes a level of sense, or we spend all day nitpicking. Question is then, what fits that description? Again, I'm still following, and I'm gonna be honest, like I've said before, I'm a big fan of complex bans. I think if something is broken, you suspect test it too. In this case, they just had open discussion for about 3-4 weeks, I think, in UBERS, which I think is very good, right? At least they've been talking, they've taken a lot of time before they came to the conclusion that they did. So, let's keep on. I keep saying that, but yeah. There are a few options that floated around the previous discussion. A BST limit to Dynamax, ban all UBERS from Dynamax, ban the mechanic itself, to name some. The community felt that a full ban was too extreme at this point in time, and banning by BST introduces a large amount of collateral if used to solve the current problems, while also setting a poor precedent. And by BST, they would mean, like, I'm assuming anything over 600 BST that'd be banned, but that wouldn't allow, I think, the Slacking have like that, or Regigigas or anything like that, whatever, something, they have like high BST, but they're not necessarily broken, right? And it wouldn't allow them to Dynamax, so that could also hurt those type of Pokemon. I don't know what the BST would have been, but just to explain that a little bit more, using UBERS is a hard baseline of what can't Dynamax would mean. Anything OU does would affect our ban list too. So we're using it as a basic idea of what to look at instead. The Sword and Shield Council felt that using everything currently UBERS as the idea would cover too many things that are not problems with Dynamax. So we decided to go by the idea that anything that we found itself being automatically placed in UBERS is a good starting point. Okay, so from there they decided to talk about UBERS itself, and they individually went through everything. And they say this left out one issue: Ditto. And now, if you guys didn't know about Ditto during Dynamax in the actual OU metagame, Ditto was the best Dynamax user. Why? Because not only could it come in and with its ability Imposter automatically copy your Pokemon that probably Dynamax and got its boost. Let's say your Gyarados went for Max Airstream twice. You also have the +2 boost from Moxie for going for that and everything. They come and they get their Gyarados as well. They can knock you out, and then they also can Dynamax with that Ditto itself. Ditto being able to circumvent the purpose of the ban list by turning it to something on that ban list and then using Dynamax is something that just doesn't make much sense to allow. And there, apparently here the precedent is that it shouldn't be allowed because it can become an Uber and then it can Dynamax as well. Okay, there are some differences between the Imposter and the original form, but in practice, Ditto will violate the premise of the ban list and take direct unintentional advantage of a tiering decision. Thinking in reverse, Ditto is being buffed by the effects of a ban on those it can copy. There are two ways this can be dealt with. One is the clause that can cover transformations, but this also means the clause has increased complexity. It's a nightmare to enforce transformations combined with Dynamax in a practice, as it requires a further convoluted in-battle alteration to prevent Ditto using Dynamax when it's transformed into a Pokemon on the ban list, and even less clear to players. Okay, so just to dumb that down a little bit, basically it would be annoying to make transformations. I just to add that in, whether it be with the code and then for people to understand it as well. Why can Ditto Dynamax sometimes and not others? There are limits to how complex a ban should be, and in this case, it's better to take the simple solution and prevent Ditto from using Dynamax altogether. With all of this in mind, the following solution was concluded and ready to be voted on. And this is where we get back to what I said in the beginning. Pokemon, so the UBERS Dynamax clause. Pokemon on the UBERS Dynamax ban list cannot Dynamax. Now, I do think this is also still relatively complex, because originally when I read it, I was like, oh, okay, so I guess the ban list can't Dynamax. That means that, let's just look at the Teambuilder real quick just to show you. So like when I first think, okay, UBERS has a complex thing, that means anything on the UBERS tier list by Uber alone can't Dynamax. But no, Darmanitan, Kyurem-B, Melmetal, and yeah, those three can still Dynamax, which is interesting. Surprised. I guess Kyurem-Black's decision was because, so the Necrozma Duskmane is like one of the most busted Ubers, right? Before this, Zacian is a great Uber. It still is a great Uber, but its means of dealing with it were like Arcanine with heavy duty boots, and also Dynamaxing, Corviknight with iron defense, Rocky Helmet, etc., things like that. But like the Necrozma Duskmane just shuts it down for the most part, and it could Dynamax as well and just max steal spike and things like that. So but by this clause, Galarian Darmanitan can still Dynamax, Kyurem-B can still Dynamax, and Melmetal will still Dynamax. So I guess according to this, their UBERS list, they were not deemed as busted from Dynamax. So this obviously takes into account a lot of their opinion. And I do want to know your thoughts on that. Now, going forward, I'm okay with a complex ban. Like I said, I'm okay with a complex ban. I think it does add an element of, well, what they say, it likes to use creativity. I don't think that should be a reason for something being banned or not. But I do understand, again, and from a selfish point of view, I do understand that. And I like that it means that these Pokemon are already strong, right? They're Ubers. They're legendaries, except for Ditto. Well, Ditto can be whatever it wants. But they're Ubers, right? They're legendaries. They're already very powerful to deal with. The fact that they can go what is essentially Super Saiyan for 3 turns. Marshadow can steal your boost, and then it can just, like, Dynamax and go for a max, not going to get more. Obviously, that's weaker than close combat, but just like an idea, right? The Cosmodust main gets bulkier and abuses weakness policy. Still a good mon, period. Reshiram gets at the sun for itself, and then after it can spam Specs Blue Flares. So there's just like all those type of examples. Zekrom gets up the terrain for itself, and then after it can spam Bolt Strike. So just saw some examples right there. And I guess Solgaleo getting like close combat and Dragon Dance and all that stuff is interesting too. So it's interesting that a lot of the Pokemon here that they ended up banning were mons that either really benefit from the Dynamax. Though in Kyurem White's case, I guess you could compare that to Darmanitan to the extent. Same speed. Darmanitan's good on the physical. Kyurem's better on the special. But then again, Guerrilla Tactics isn't taken into account when you Dynamax. So Darm isn't as powerful as it is when it's not Dynamax. So interesting. Very interesting as you go with that. So I do want to know your thoughts on that. I do think that I feel like instead of outright banning Dynamax from the OU tier, by the way, some kind of complex ban could have happened. I really feel like the notion that we need to make it super easy for people to understand to play us. Why can't you just have a pop-up like you do a million times? I'll show y'all what I mean right now. Lunala. Acrobatics, blah, 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 blah. This. Let me pick a random name. Whatever. Now, look what happens if I try and look for an UBERS game with this Lunala. Oh, shoot. Are they going to let me? Nope. Perfect. This comes out and tells me, hey, your team was rejected for the following reasons. You suck. Put on some EVs on your Mon. That's it. That's what it's saying. I don't understand why we can't do things like that. Why do people have to come on to Showdown and completely have to 100% understand what's going on? Why couldn't this just tell me, hey, you cannot use Speed Boost Blaziken in the OU tier. However, if you change it to Blaze, you can use it right now. We have this pop-up going up for a reason, right? So the notion that you should make something not as complex because it's easier to understand, come on, man, we can read. How do we find Pokemon Showdown if we can't read? Like, can't play Pokemon Showdown if we can't. Okay, we can play Pokemon Showdown if we can't read. I take that back. You can definitely give your kid your iPad and open up a random battle, and they can click buttons until they lose or win, or the opponent leaves if they're lower on the ladder. But even then, like, give us some type of complex ban. I'm okay with this for Ubers. I am okay with this for Ubers because I do think that it opens up that creative option as well, which again, going back to it, I don't think is the way you should look at a tier, but I mean, shoot, man. We could have had some sort of complex thing with Gigantamax Pokemon in OU as well. Like, I'm looking at that too. Shoot, ban Max Airstream, you could have banned the max moves on everything but the Gigantamax Pokemon itself. I want to be able to use Caparage and use my Steel Stealth Rock. You know what I mean? So it's just ideas. Like I feel like this could have been something that could have been explored as well. And well, I do think that Ubers might have some backlash from it, and by some I mean a lot. Ubers will definitely have Ubers will definitely have some type of backlash, and in fact, we might even see a reverse of this. Again, I don't know if the Ubers tier leader talked with Chaos and everything. I just remember the last time that Mega Rayquaza was going to be banned, they made the Anything Goes tier. Or when they did something about the Shadow Tag Suspect test for Gengar, when they altered actually the results. They didn't alter the results, but like you have to write a paragraph as to why, after you got Rex, you have to write a paragraph as to why Mega Gengar should be banned. And if your paragraph sucked, they didn't let you, and of course that's extremely subjective, right? That's the reason that someone should step in, but that's just something that happens. So with this isn't even the first complex ban for Pokemon in general, right? How many times was Baton Pass nerfed until we had it the way it was? How many times was Sand Rush or Sun or whatever was limited, right? throughout the generations that these things happen. So again, I want to know your thoughts on this, and then we can actually know a little bit of the Uber tier players. So a scenario that actually put that they don't want this to enabled. So I'm actually going to read what they say, and I want to know your thoughts on what she has to say. So my thoughts on Dynamax and Ubers hasn't changed since my post in the Ubers on the radar. If this post is longer than 10, yeah, you know what? I'm sure this is a great post, but I'm not going to read it right now. I am, however, in strong disagreement that a specific Dynamax banlist is the way to handle it, especially in the near future with DLC releases. Okay, so in her case, she doesn't want, my bad if she isn't the wrong term, but I mean, you could be a dude, I guess. I'm just going to say they don't want, because I don't know anything. You're just on a computer screen. I just see a name. I thought that was a girl name. My mom's name is Jackie, but Jackie Robinson. I just look like a fool right now, don't I? Anyway, in their case, they don't want it to happen because they're keeping in mind that the new DLC is coming out, right? So this proposed Dynamax banlist offers a short-term solution which will be hit with a considerable amount of challenge for us, forcing us to constantly evaluate the releases of additional Pokemon through extra suspect testing and our council votes. So in her, or they, in their statement, you see how this is a specific group of Ubers that are quote-unquote broken or not, but it didn't put Darmanitan, it didn't put Melmetal, and it didn't put Kyurem-B. I'm sure that was all like debated between everybody in the community. So what they're saying is that if they do that for this, there's going to have to be extra suspect tested or council votes, which I don't think necessarily is a bad thing. If something is broken, test it out. When Doug Show gets banned, if this means that Kyurem and Zero did get banned, but if this means that Kyurem as well as Zeraora are just so broken to the point we test them too, the Dynamax list solution is prone to cherry picking from the community, constantly debating what Pokemon should and should not be able to Dynamax is dangerous and uncharted ground, in my opinion, a controversial direction of how we should handle the tiering of a mechanic such as Dynamax. It also challenges the scrutiny of our own tiering, and how we handle this going forward feels very unclear to me. I feel the simplest solution to this is to test the Dynamax mechanic as a whole. I would support the idea of a full Dynamax ban in Ubers. I do not feel the mechanic itself should have any place in the metagame, but a complex solution which raises a lot of questions and redefines how we have to look at things is not the way to handle it, just for the sake of preserving purity in Ubers tiering and retaining an unbalanced mechanic. Interesting. So I want to know, do you guys agree or disagree with that? I see where they're coming from, right? I see where they're coming from, but I'm not entirely sure. Like, by this case, if they ban Dynamax and Ubers, this would be Ubers, right? Ubers before would be 3 Pokemon. Now it's the reason Ubers can function this generation is because Pokemon like this, right, can work, can check things because of Dynamax, right? These are all viable Pokemon in Ubers tier. Because of Dynamax. Obviously Ditto is on the list too, but because of Dynamax, these are all viable Pokemon in the Ubers tier. Let me just pick a random Pokemon as well that is also viable. Something that comes to mind, I don't know. Like I said, I already said Centiskorch earlier, so let's say Centiskorch. These are all viable Pokemon because of Dynamax, and then it would make Ubers a lot harder for certain things to work, which makes sense going back to what they said about the creative team voting. But again, that's not necessarily a reason to do it, but at the end of the day, you're the leader of it. Let's see what the leader has to say. When we simplify the issue to Dynamax was fine pre-home and not fine post-home, the picture becomes clear as to why a complex ban and the stuff brought brought to us is a good starting point. I feel like that would make more sense if it also banned Kyurem-B as well as Melmetal, personally. Because again, they are cherry picking at this point, which ones are doing that. But it walks the fine line between the preservation policy in Ubers and maintaining competitive edge. My viewpoints were mostly laid out in the radar thread, but at the moment I'm willing to see how this goes. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little apprehensive about this. This is our first time making real use of the complex ban freedom modern Ubers has. Interesting. I like that Ubers has a complex ban freedom. Can we get OU to have that too? And for a mechanic controversy across the entire site and generation at large to boot. The solution works in the short term, and we justified the route we chose as best as we could, but it would be foolish to call it perfect when it comes to our first crack at balancing Dynamax around this tier and generally using complex bans to preserve elements. We have to be vigilant about future issues and complaints in order to keep the solution working as intended while staying true to Ubers, and I think that's going to be a good challenge that this community can take on. Hopefully this new road is met with positivity and understanding. So I mean, I like the way they dealt with this, right? they made the solution so that Ubers can still be playable, in a sense, in their regard of what's playable, and Dynamax can be quote unquote fine. And if something happens, they're willing to change it. And I think that's a fine way to think about these sort of things. I honestly think that is fine. And I know that OU's not going to adopt that solution or anything like that. Because especially a lot of them are stuck in their way. Even when I was on the OU Council years ago, I was trying to push, a resuspect of Blaziken and like, hey, can we just have a complex ban? People are not dumb. Let's just do this. Like, come on, man. But let me know your thoughts, guys, on this. As for now, this means that Ubers, everything can Dynamax except for Ditto, Kyurem-White, Lunala, Marshadow, Mewtwo, Necrozma, Duskmane, Necrozma, Dawn Wings, Reshiram, Solgaleo, and Zekrom. So what are your thoughts overall on the Ubers complex plan? Do you agree or do you disagree? Would you like to see OU adopt this? These are all the stuff that I'm leaving you with today. Sup, you beautiful bastard. I don't know. I just reminded myself of Philly DeFranco. Philly DeFranco. Damn. Sorry. I'm just tired. But yeah. Thank you, everybody, for listening. This is the last day to pick up my Drop a Draco merch, by the way. So if y'all want to, for 15% off, you can with code Draco. This is the absolute last day to pick it up. And I will see you guys next time. Goodbye, my friends.